Hey everyone, I'm Ben Eubanks, your host. So glad you're here. And today I am joyful because I get to learn about joy with my good friend, Jason Thrasher. Jason was rated one of the most inspiring speakers of our event this year at HR Summer School. And it's because he talked about choosing to work with joy in a field where many of us have difficulty and challenge and struggle every single day. And so we're going to hear from Jason some of the things we can do to work with joy, how to choose that every day. I appreciate him so much. Again, this was recorded as part of HR Summer School this year. If you don't know HR Summer School, where have you been? My goodness, it's one of the biggest and best things our team does every year, every June. It is virtual, it is free, it is 7.5 hours of HRCI and SHRM credits. It's a ton of fun, honestly. And so if you enjoy the podcast, you'll doubly enjoy that because you get a little bit more fun and spice and variety and spontaneity in there. So let's jump in with Jason and hear from him on how we can choose joy.
Don't conduct your analysis in isolation because data is so incredibly powerful.
Not defending just the tribe, but defending the organization.
Those creative people that you really want to keep empowered, keep excited, keep motivated, keep thinking.
A good experience pays dividends down the line.
Stereotypes tend to break down in proximity.
Welcome to We're Only Human, a podcast about human resources, business, technology, and the workplace. My name is Ben Eubanks, your host, and I'm so glad you're here.
Hey everybody, listen, I'm excited about this conversation. If many of you do not know this gentleman that is joining us, I want you, Jason, if you could just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about what you do, where you live in, maybe a little secret that will be fun for somebody to catch on to.
Hey everybody, I'm Jason Thrasher. Welcome to HR Summer School. I live in Huntsville, Alabama. I'm the director of HR for Syntec. We're a government contractor, and I've been in HR for well over 20 years. Little fun fact about me is I never intended to get into HR. I was going to live in Nashville and work with Reba McEntire and Dolly Parton and Garth Brooks, and life happened. And now I'm joining you today on HR Summer School.
That sounds like a ball of fun. I think, over our last couple of years, we had a great time last year together on the stage for HR Disrupt in Huntsville, Alabama. And some of the things that you bring to life really resonates with me. So I want to drive right into it because a lot of people like yourself, including me, never thought that I intended or even thought about being in this space of HR, whether it's, leading HR leaders and championing them. But I never thought of that. And you mentioned that just now. One of the things I really love about what you bring to the table is that you don't just do what you do. You don't do HR because you have to. You do it with a resounding, spirit of joy. Let's dive into what does it mean to bring joy to the workplace and why is it something that's important to you?
George, I learned a really concept last fall. I've heard it my whole life, but now I really kind of have taken it to heart. And joy is now. I believe joy is now. It's not tomorrow. Many of us think that once we get our finances, our home, our social life, our career, life in general, that we will then have joy. But the reality is that joy is now. We're not promised tomorrow. So really being able to live in the moment. And last week at the Al SHRM conference, I learned a new phrase, be where your feet are. And that's be where your feet are. When you think about joy is now and be where your feet are, it puts it into perspective of living in the moment. But in the moment, you can have joy. And I believe you bring that to the workplace. I believe you bring it into your life and every aspect of what you do.
I love that. What are some things that you do to really help embed the idea of everyday practices? When I think about joy, sometimes it's like finding joy in what I do. Sometimes it's finding joy in the outcomes of what I see and the potential of others. What are some practical things that you do that you practice every day to make sure that joy is something that you're living with? I think about it. My dad used to make this weird quote. I'm apologizing to any Sarah that's out there, but he always used to tell me at a young age, George, you can't wake up with joy in the morning if you go to bed with Sarah. And I was like, Dad, this is where I get my acronyms from. My dad, everybody. He would always say, you can't go to bed with a sorry and rotten attitude and expect to wake up with joy. And so what are some things that you do to really wake up with joy, that new joy that's every morning? It's something that is given. It's something that comes internal, right? When I think about it, what are some things that you believe in practices and that helps you keep your joy every day?
First off, I learned this phrase from a young lady at Chick-fil-A. I asked her how she was doing that morning, and she said, I'm great. I was on the list to get up today. And so I used that first phrase of I was on the list to get up today, and I get to do life. I get to go to work. I don't have to. Yeah, I have bad days and stressful days just like everybody else. I also believe that the culture you create determines the audience you keep. So the culture
say that again. Say that again. Sorry.
The culture you create determines the audience that you keep. So I believe as a leader, HR leader, organizational leader, you bring joy into the workplace, into your environment. It creates a culture atmosphere. And that culture determines the audience, employees, coworkers, etc., that you keep. One of my favorite authors, and yours too, John Maxwell, says people's purpose in life is always connected to their giftedness.
Yeah.
And understanding what your giftedness is, your professional giftedness, and learning to operate in that, those are those practical steps every day that I try to practice. That first one is being thankful that I was on the list to get up today. Some others are you believe in yourself. Just like your dad, that acronym, if you go to bed with sorrow, you can't wake up with joy. We have to believe in yourself. You have to believe yourself in the good times, in the challenging times, in the times that scare you to death in your career and you're taking that next step. But you have to believe in yourself. And that allows you to believe in your teams. One thing I've learned to do is trust yourself. And so I encourage everyone to lean in to trust yourself, trust your training and development, and trust your connections. That is this network. Everyone joining today in HR Summer School, this is this incredible network. And when you lean in and trust yourself, you trust your training, and you trust your connections, it is a winning combination that allows you then to bring joy into the workplace.
I love that. When I think about it, when it comes to joy, and I give some personal things that, sometimes we find joy in what we do. Sometimes we find joy in who we do it with, right, in the workplace. And then there's this season where we mask at times the joy that we have. We try to thrive on that joy that really that covers, some of the struggles in life. May was, last month, May was the month of mental health well-being. And I've seen so many people who are happy in what they do, but sometimes we're so happy with that, it tends to cover up the mental health or the lack thereof that we focus on. How do you balance, keeping that joy, but also being present with yourself, making sure that you're taking care of yourself to be able to sustain that, and it's real and it's authentic and it's not just something that's draining, like you got a little bit of joy left in your cup and you're just trying to savor that a little bit, hoping that something to refill it. How do you keep that balance?
I like to think of this. Joy is not rah-rah. It's not the rah-rah, the cheerleader squad. It's not that. Joy is an inner peace. And sometimes joy is in the day-to-day tasks. Joy is in the moment. And when you sincerely care about people on a deeper personal level, you're also able to care about yourself. And you first must take care of yourself in order to take care of others. And as HR professionals around the world, many times we spend most of our time taking care of others. But who takes care of us?
Yeah.
And we have to find that network. We have to find those people, those colleagues, other activities that help us both mentally, physically, to be cared for. That allows us then to care for others and allows us to bring that joy and that peace and create that culture that we all really want in all of our environments, whether it's work, home, life, doesn't really matter. That allows us to bring that.
Yeah. Have you ever seen an example, Jason, where focusing on joy within the workplace, joy in HR led to tangible improvements, whether it be in employee morale, employee engagement, employee fulfillment, or business outcomes? What are some of the outcomes of not just doing HR, not just doing life, not just doing work, but having a sense of purpose behind it, where you see the outcomes and the improvements that happens with that joy that comes from within, as you say?
I think when people feel valued, when people feel valued, they want to contribute. Everyone wants to be not just on the bus, but you want to be in the group that got on the bus, that went on the trip.
Yeah.
You want to be an active member of that team. And conveying value to people is in your day-to-day actions. I'll tell you a little story. Years ago, I worked in retail. So a shout out to anyone on HR School today that works in retail. I applaud you. I have been there and love you for it. But back many years ago, worked in retail. And so it was a large department store. Shout out to Parisian, any old Parisian employees on the call today. We're connected. But back then, we had to unload trucks in the morning, and I was the HR manager. Well, my job was to kind of motivate employees back then. And I started this out kind of just haphazardly. And I'd get on the intercom. I'd say, good morning, everybody. How you doing this morning? We're so glad. Thank you for coming to work today. Now look over at your neighbor and say, thank you for coming to work today. We would do that day after day after day in this morning of production. And it was all over the building and it started to catch on. And so on the days that I didn't do it, I'd be held accountable. Hey, are you not going to tell us thank you for coming to work today? And so over time, that created kind of a mantra, thank you for coming to work, kind of become my slogan. But what it did with employees is what I saw an intangible. It showed a value that they participated, they engaged with one another. And that production time, which was early in the morning, like 6 a.m., became a whole lot sweeter. So did I do it? No, I didn't do it. It wasn't me at all. It was each individual person that took the time to kind of pour into one another. And so now today, when I go in stores around Huntsville and I still see some former colleagues, they'll tell me, thank you for coming to work today. So I saw the tangible effects. It increased morale, it increased productivity, and it overall created that culture of the audience that you keep.
Yeah, I'm gonna come back to this, but one of the memories popped in my head as you were talking about that culture. And I always talk about culture as how most employees feel, believe, and behave most of the time, not all the time. One of the things that really stands out to me in this memory as we're talking about culture, because how you made me feel at an event, was through dancing, was through songs. What is a song that brings joy to your spirit? Just kind of off the cuff, we're just going to kind of change it up because music does something to the soul, and we both love music. Does Jason have a song that just instantly changes the focus, changes the culture, changes the vibe, the feel for yourself personally that brings joy to you? When you hear this voice, is it a certain artist? Is it a certain song? Is it a band? What's something that brings you joy from the sounds?
So here's a funny one. So I love country music. If y'all haven't can tell, I'm a country boy from Alabama. So I love artists like Reba and Dolly. Every time I hear the iconic 9 to 5, I remember where I was at when I heard the song. I can remember the movie, everything about it, and it replays the 80s in my head. And that is just one of those fun songs. I actually sang it last week at the Al Sherm conference in karaoke with my buddy Annette. So that's one of those fun songs that just kind of brings me joy. It's just a fun listen song. I got quite a few more. Love some Reba, love some Tina Turner. There's another one. And then we switch over to the worship lane. There's CeCe Winans. So I've got all kinds of playlists. But that 9 to 5, when I hear that dun 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 dun, that right there brings joy to me.
That is awesome. When I think about it, I think about my retail days. I used to have 18 retail stores, and we used to have the music that we use. We could essentially, no matter what, remotely change the music to stores. And we would do that if the vibe wasn't right or the energy wasn't right or sales were down. We knew there are certain songs for each location. We knew what our employees loved, what they didn't like, right? And so we would always change that up. And it was something about the sounds that changes the atmosphere, right? It brings something. When I think of joy, I think joy is a sound that really changes the atmosphere. It may not be a verbal sound, but it's something that just resonates with the sound of your heart, the soul of your heart. And so we would do that because we didn't want employees, we didn't want team members to just check the box. So how can HR teams break out of the mindset of checking the box, instead focus on the human connection, right? What is something that now that I know that 9 to 5 does something to the soul of Jason, if I see Jason just checking the box, or I see Jason not being his authentic self, or there's something wrong with his mood, I want to be able to touch the soul. I'm turning on 9 to 5. I'm turning on some CC, the Wines, things that resonate with your soul. What are some things that we can do in the workplace that can help change the sound of those who are checking the box? Whether it's music, whether it's, how do we get that joy back?
Right. Simon Sinek says, know your why. And so finding your why, understanding your why, just understanding your joy, but understanding the why of your coworkers, your colleagues, your teams, maybe direct reports, getting to know them at that level, that creates that atmosphere and culture. We were not meant to do life alone. We're not on this cruise ship by ourselves. And so being able to work together, work with one another, empowering yourself to empower others is key in any environment. Believe in yourself so you can believe in others. It takes practice. John Maxwell says this: success is knowing your purpose in life, growing in your maximum potential, and sowing seeds that benefit others. So as you get to know your teams, as you lean into one another, being able to bring that moment of joy in the day, because everyone's going to have bad days. Everyone's going to have challenging days, whether they're work, life, it doesn't matter. But being able to speak into individuals, to step in with that 9 to 5 or whatever is their jam, that brightens their day. You know, you will never know when a moment will be precious to other people.
Yeah.
And you will never find out until you're willing to give it. And that's why I say joy is now.
I love joy is now. Joy is really the foundation of it. It breeds from your purpose. You mentioned the word purpose several times, and I think about our purpose as leaders in professions is really an opportunity to transform lives. It's really an opportunity to foster the growth. It's really an opportunity, as we're discussing, to create a culture of joy. And, when I think about joy, as you were saying what you were saying and quoting John Maxwell, when I think of a joy, it's only right that we end the conversation on creating acronyms together. So you can think about what joy means to you. When I think about joy, just listening to you, Jason, I think about just own your impact, right? Just own your why, right? So act with intention. Don't overthink. Start with what you have, lead with authenticity, ownership, right? Take ownership, take responsibility for your actions. If you go to bed with sorry and right attitude, George, you got to own your own impact. And so, own your energy and own the example that we are meant to set for other people as leaders. We set the tone, we set the mood, we set the atmosphere with the sounds that we speak, but also the sounds that we act, and then own your impact. And I would even encourage everybody to own your blank, whatever that is. Yes. Own your blank, own your why, own your purpose. Every interaction counts, every word, our attitude, our presence, it creates a ripple effect that makes meaningful impact. And so, Jason, take us home. What does joy mean to you? If you were to break down JOY into acronym, what does that look like? What does that sound like for you?
Just own yourself.
Yeah. Ooh, I like that. Simplicity.
Just own yourself. If you own yourself, and that doesn't mean we're perfect. None of us are perfect. I'm not perfect, but just own yourself.
Yeah.
Every day, it takes practice. And as we practice it every day, it is conveyed and it becomes contagious. And it will transform yourself and transform your team.
It's said that joy can be unspeakable. And I think we both believe in that. And the world didn't give it and the world can't take it away. So how can people connect with Jason? Where can they find you? Where can they hear more about what you're doing and stay connected with you?
So I have my own website. You can check out bestlife50.blog. Connect with me there. Would love to stay in contact. Find me on LinkedIn at Jason Thrasher. Would love to stay in contact with all of you.
Awesome. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I am leaving this session filled with joy, not just because of Jason's spirit, his smile, but also his humility and what he brings to the table. Make sure you connect with Jason, and we'll move to the next session. I'm excited about what's coming up. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, George.
Thank you so much for joining me on the show today. I'm honored to have you as a listener. If you enjoyed this episode, please take 10 seconds to rate it at iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to your podcast. Also, if you know a friend that could benefit from today's conversation, please pass it their way. After all, a rising tide lifts all ships. To see show notes, sponsor information, and our full show archives, visit onlyhumanshow.com.